Welcome to the Global Business Chat series. In these interviews, Wes is chatting about all things business to serious professionals from a variety of industries. Listen in to hear more about their challenges, opportunities, and the lessons they've learned along the way.
Morning, Faye.
Morning, Wes. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. How are you today?
Yeah, good, thank you. Thanks for inviting me on this podcast.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for joining us on the Global Business Chat. Today is looking at discussing about starting up a business, pros and cons, looking at the things to think about from accounts, what type of business to set up, and then also the insurances which will be required. So you've recently set up a business. Would you like to tell us a little bit about this?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been an accountant since for quite a long time now, and I've always been employed. And I worked for my previous employer for, gosh, I think it was coming up to sort of 15 years when I left. And basically me and one of my colleagues decided that actually we could do this for ourselves, and it was the right time for us to move on and start our own business. So me and Anna started Athena Accounting in June, and it's the best thing we've ever done.
Awesome, congratulations. And
Thank
yeah,
you.
really pleased that you set up your own business. We've known you for quite a long time as well, so pleased to see you take that plunge so that people say. So let's talk about, did you set up like a limited company? Is it a partnership?
Yeah, so we decided to go down the limited company route. For our firm, we felt that was the best structure for us. And yeah, so we just got that done earlier in the year, and then started trading on the 1st of June.
Awesome. So for listeners out there, what would be the reasons to set up a limited company, say, compared to like a partnership or going as a sole trader?
Yeah. So, I mean, one of the main points is that for a limited company, you've got limited liability protection. And basically what that means is that, should anything go wrong in the business, then the owner's personal assets are protected. So you've got that security, really, if should anything go wrong, which you do have to consider. And also there are tax advantages of being a limited company, depending on the circumstances of the business and obviously the individuals, but the way in which it's taxed can be really beneficial for the owners of the business. And I think as well for us, one of the reasons, and for a lot of businesses as well, is it's the image that you portray. I think a lot of people, think that a limited company is, looks a bit more important, a bit more professional. So that can also be a consideration. And, not for us, but I know for some of my clients that we act for as well, credibility. So for certain industries in particular, like IT consultancy, construction industry, some of the people that they're contracting with, or some of the organisations that they're contracting with, will only contract with a limited company because of the risks involved in doing it any other way. And also, I suppose my final point for a limited company would be protecting the limited company name, because when you register a company at Companies House, the name has to be unique. So once you've got that registered there, you're protecting your brand in a way.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember we set ours up quite a while ago now, and set up through Companies House. We also trademarked it. We're kind of advised at an early stage to get that trademark in there.
Yeah.
On the basis that we would grow, become world famous, and
absolutely
copy our brand. We're not quite there yet, but hey, it takes
it's always good to consider these things.
It is. I think I was jumping the gun quite a lot, but it's there now, so which is good. So yeah, you said about setting up a limited company. What do you deem the differences between, let's say, like a limited company, a partnership, and a sole trader, and the things to look out for should you choose not to set up a limited company?
Yeah. So obviously I've gone through some of the things about a limited company already, but some of the other things to note is that with a limited company, you are registered at Companies House. So, you know, the company details, the directors' details and the shareholders' details are publicly available to a certain degree, depending on certain things where your registered offices and things like that. The other thing to consider is that actually the accounts are also published at Companies House, although depending on your size, you wouldn't necessarily be, you know, making publicly available all of the information in your accounts. It might be a filleted version. With a partnership, that's certainly more of a simple structure, and you know, the partners own the business, and also the partners decide on what share of the profits they're going to get. But one of the important differences is that a partnership, there is no limited liability. So should anything go wrong in the business, then actually those partners are liable. So, you know, worst case scenario, their personal assets aren't protected. So that's a very sort of, it's a very important consideration. Particularly, you know, some industries as well are more prone to, you know, are more risky than others, shall we say. So that's definitely something that everyone needs to be thinking about when they're thinking about what structure they want their business to take. The other thing is with a partnership isn't actually taxed. It's the partners themselves that are taxed. So their share of the profits are taxed on their personal tax. Limited liability partnership. So that kind of has the benefits of a limited company with a partnership, if you like. It's so you have got that limited liability protection. You also they do have to register at Companies House as well, but they're not governed by the Companies Act. So that's another thing to point out, is that limited companies are governed by the Companies Act, and they have to, you know, do things in a certain way and report things in a certain way. The accounts for a limited liability partnership, like a limited company, also have to be filed at Companies House. But the members agreement, and the equivalent for a limited company would be like the memorandum and articles of association, isn't publicly available at Companies House. And yeah, and in a limited liability partnership, you're considered to be a member, whereas in a limited company, you have your directors and your shareholders. Well, as a member, you are actually taxed personally on the profit share from the partnership. So like a traditional partnership, if you like, the limited liability partnership isn't taxed itself. The members are taxed on their proportion of the profits.
Right. Okay.
And that's it. And I would say with limited liability partnerships, it's not something that's used as often as a limited company, and you know, it's favoured more by professional services, so you know, solicitors, people like that. Yeah.
Okay, it's interesting you mentioned about personal assets. So for a limited company, the personal liability is limited, and so the personal assets are protected.
That's providing no fraud has occurred, of course.
Sure.
So yeah, providing the directors have acted, you know, in the best interests of the company, and you know, if things go wrong, then actually, yeah, as you said, their personal assets are protected.
Sure. Yeah, no, absolutely. Where I was going with that is that you've got the directors and officers insurance as well, which basically protects the personal assets of the directors, which is there's a lot more to it, absolutely, but the main aim is that if the director gets sued in his capacity as a director of that company but gets sued personally, the directors and officers insurance, also known as management liability protection, can cover that as well.
So it's that added bit of security.
Absolutely, it's very popular for especially like limited companies, and like you said, adds that protection. So that's well worth a mention and think about when setting up a limited company as well. No, that's awesome. Thank you for that. It's been a while since we set up Glowshore. I'm sure it's kind of relatively new. Or not new, it's relatively fresh, is a better word actually. How easy was it to set up the company? Was there more to do than just go to Companies House? for you?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously it's something that we've been involved in, for a number of years, because it's something that we get involved in with our clients anyway. But certainly for us, one of the really challenging bits, or the bit that took the time, was thinking of the name. Okay, because of course every limited company has to have a unique name, doesn't it? And actually, what do you call yourself when you're starting up in business? And for us, we didn't want to have the traditional, our surnames sort of put together or anything like that. So so we had a little bit of research to decide what name we liked, and then of course we went online. So there's actually on gov.uk there's a name checker available, so you can, if there's a company name that you like, you slot it in and it tells you if it's available or not before you then actually go into the process of incorporating the company. So that was quite handy. And then the next thing we had to decide on was the structure and the ownership of the company. So, how are we gonna split this? So, when you're setting up a company, if you're on your own, that's easy, isn't it? You might be the sole director and you might own 100% of the shares. But actually, if you're working, with somebody, with a colleague that you're setting up in business with, then actually, are you going to be doing it 50-50? Are you doing equal amounts of work? Are you, or is one of you going to be working on a part-time basis? But you do have to think about that ownership, because the ownership will also determine what you can take out of the business by way of dividends and income, if you like. So that was obviously a consideration, and also how to incorporate. So yeah, you can go on. We actually went online, did it ourselves. So you just go through Companies House. It costs you £12. You pop in all your information about the company and the directors and the shareholders, pay £12, and Bob's your uncle, it's done. And there are standard memorandum and articles of association are provided by Companies House. So you can have those available. For us, that was an easy option because we know how a limited company needs to be set up. But for those that, they haven't set up a limited company before, they may choose to go down the route of getting, an agent, an incorporation agent, or their accountant to do it for them. That way they know that everything's been set up correctly. And also, if you do it that way, you can choose to have, particularly if you're using an incorporation agent, non-standard memorandum and articles of association for the information on how the company's run and how you appoint directors and all those sorts of things.
Wow. It's interesting you talked about the name. That was the most difficult part for us when we set
Was it?
Glowshore.
Yeah.
We actually employed someone to, I'd say employed is the wrong word. We got a consultant to help us. And similar to you, we didn't want to use our names because I read the E-Myth before we started the business, and one of it was saying, or one of the points in the book was to say, by using your names, it's then almost kind of attached to you for life. Whereas if you have a name outside of your surname, so to speak, it can be detached. So that was quite interesting. We wanted a name that kind of highlighted our characters, I suppose, for a better word, but it also needed to have that kind of professional, like, insurance bit in. So Glow come from kind of our personalities, bit of fun, kind of sometimes a bit loud, but also kind of a little bit out there, trying to be a bit different. And then the shore was just the insurance, kind of, we called it the boring bit, but it's the insurance aspect, the professional bit, rather than the boring bit. And so Glowshore was formed. We did have this crazy idea to kind of incorporate glowworms, just a bit of fun. We haven't, but hey, never say never, so you never know.
No, absolutely. And you've got to think about these things, haven't you, and how it can evolve, and also how that goes in towards your logo and the image that you're portraying, and for us, when we were choosing our name, we found it really difficult, and we were thinking sort of separately what names we liked. And actually for us then, it was really strange because I decided to look at, unbeknownst to Anna, gods and goddesses and things like that, and then I just had a little scroll through, but nothing sort of concrete. And then Anna came back to me, I think it was the following day, and she's like, Athena, she's like the goddess of wisdom. She has a little owl on her shoulder, and I was like, oh my goodness, I was actually looking at gods and goddesses yesterday. And it was really strange how actually we were both thinking along the same lines. And then actually we chose Athena. She's a strong woman, the wisdom and the owl on her shoulder, and that's how Athena Accounting was born.
Awesome. It's great that you're on the same page, because another important part is to have that same vision, that same goal.
Absolutely.
And to be on the same journey together, because if you don't share it, at some point that could potentially cause issues. So
absolutely,
yeah, that's quite important for anyone looking to go into business with someone or with a group of people.
Yeah, I think it's really important when you're going into business with somebody else, that you trust them implicitly. Anna and I have worked together for 14 years, and we work in very much the same way. We've got the same values. We've been a great support network to each other through the years as well, and our knowledge bases together combined, you've got a greater knowledge base there, and we just work really well together. And it was just a natural fit. I couldn't think of anyone else I'd want to go into business with.
Awesome. That's a great compliment there for Anna. So
absolutely. I'm sure she'd say the same about me.
Yeah. We'll find out. So one question I had actually was, when we set up Glowshore, we didn't really know much about the share capital. So I can ask, without going into like the intricate details, but how did you decide on like what share capital to put in? Because it's actually quite an important part that sticks with the business for forever, basically. Unless I've got that wrong, but
yeah. So like this, a standard basic standard limited company, you're going to be issuing ordinary shares, and certainly for the initial shareholders, the business owners, the rights attached to those shares are going to be to a certain extent standard. So you're going to have equal voting rights, or they're going to have voting rights, ownership, and allow you dividends and distributions to extract income from the business. So actually deciding on the number of shares you're going to issue, we quite often say, obviously a lot of our businesses are small and medium-sized businesses, start off with 100 ordinary shares or 1,000 ordinary shares, and then distribute those to your shareholders in accordance to what ownership of the company you want them to have. So say there's 2 of you and you want to have equal ownership, then you'd have, say, 100 ordinary shares, and you would own 50 shares each. You then both own and control that company. Now, share capital is important, but share capital can be changed. So you can actually, as the years progress, you can issue more ordinary shares, or you could issue a different class of share if you wanted to bring somebody on board, perhaps, but you wanted to give them different voting rights, or you wanted to give them, you didn't want them to have rights to dividends or not dividends, but capital distributions in the future. So you can vary the rights according to the structure that you want for your company.
Okay, great. So I think one of the answers there is, if you're unsure, speak to you.
Yeah, that'd probably be a good idea.
Yeah, absolutely. Don't try and do it.
Always get professional advice. It may seem simple to yourself, but actually, getting something set up properly in the beginning is really, really important. So, getting that professional advice at the start, it's set up as you mean to go on, if you like.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's a really good point. Going back to our conversation towards the beginning, we touched on tax efficiencies. Can we go back to some tax efficiencies that you mentioned from setting up a limited company? Can we go into a bit more detail?
Yeah, absolutely. So for businesses really that are, for any business, if your profits are around about £30,000, and I do have to put a caveat in here because there's many other reasons, there might be personal circumstances or business or circumstances that are particular to that business that mean it's the case. But if your profits are roughly around about £30,000 or above, quite often being a limited company is going to be more beneficial to you. So, if you've got profits of that amount, speak to an accountant, speak to your accountant, and establish whether a limited company would actually be a more tax efficient vehicle for you. So one of the things is a limited company basically has to pay corporate tax, and at the moment that's 19%, and there's been an awful lot over the news over the last sort of 12 months or so, that is actually increasing to 25% in April 2023. So any businesses earn £250,000 or more will be subject to corporate tax at 25%. If a business has profits of £50,000 or less, you still only pay that 19%. And then if you have profits that are in between both of those figures, then actually the corporate tax will increase, but on a gradual scale. You get something called marginal relief, but that's a bit technical. So that's one of the efficiencies, is paying the corporate tax. But then what happens is directors have to extract their income from a company in a different way, because of course a company is a separate legal entity, and I think that's actually something that I haven't actually said so far in our podcast. So it's a separate legal entity, so the directors and the shareholders have to take their income via the way of salary, which is usually a nominal salary, and dividends, and then the directors would be taxed on that income personally through their personal tax return. And it's important to say that dividend income, you don't pay any national insurance contributions on that, but you do pay tax at 7.5% if you're a lower rate tax or basic rate taxpayer, and 32.5% if you're a higher rate taxpayer. And one of the other important things to note is, in the news over the last, I'm trying to think how long ago it was it 3 or 4 weeks ago? They are actually increasing tax by 1.25% for dividends and also national insurance. So that's going to affect employees and directors and businesses in general. I think it's also important to say that obviously directors can extract a salary from the company. Well, that salary is fully tax deductible for the business as well, so they will get corporate tax relief on that. What else?
Do you know, it's all good. No, there's that's perfect. I mean, like I said, there's a lot of nuggets there, I think, for people to think about.
I think as well, one of the considerations is, when you're a limited company, your accountancy fees are going to be higher because there's more work involved for the accountant. But when accountants assess whether you should be a limited company or not, they will not only take into account your tax savings by being a limited company, but they'll also make sure that those tax savings outweigh any additional costs that the of the accountancy fees.
Sure. As well, another point which we haven't really touched on yet, but it's probably relevant to now, is that when you're setting up a company, it's to think about what insurances are required.
Absolutely.
Usually insurance is kind of left to the last minute because people don't really think about it, which is absolutely fair enough. I mean, if I wasn't in insurance, I probably wouldn't think about it, to be so but yeah, it's if you're setting up a limited company, it's to think quite an early stage what insurances are required, because there'll be legal policies that they need legally, I should say. Sorry, things like employer's liability. So if you're setting up a limited company and you do have an employee from day one, unless it's your spouse, then legally you do require the employer's liability. You'd also be prudent to take out public liability, and then depending on if you're a professional or not, you might need professional indemnity. Similar to sales, when you set up, I'd imagine you've got the public liability, you've got your employer's liability, potentially professional indemnity. If you've got a small office, then potentially you'd look at an office policy that would incorporate your public liability, your employer's liability, computer equipment. So there's quite a few things to think about, and depending on the industry as well.
So do you find sometimes that you get people calling you, for say they're calling you for their business insurance, and then actually you have that conversation, and then you're the one who sort of directs them and says, well, you need to think about your your premises insurance and your employees liability, and they don't always know what they're asking for.
Oh, do you know, 100%. And that's part of the broker's job, really, whether it be us or another broker. And startups tend to be great business because you're with them from the beginning. And that beginning conversation is usually an education. So you'll have a conversation with someone that's starting up a business. And you'll be like, okay, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? But you're also listening to them at the same time. So you're understanding exactly what it is that they're trying to achieve, what it is that they're starting up, and then what they require, what they need. Because 9 times out of 10, what they think they do need, but there'll be additional factors as well, or additional parts or sections to that insurance that they need as well. And so, like we said, starting up a business where you're office based, 9 times out of 10, someone will just say, I need public liability, I'm starting business in 3 days. And then all of a sudden you'll have this conversation. So they need public liability, they might need professional indemnity, they'll probably need employer's liability, they'll want a laptop covered, they'll probably need an additional printer, if they've got telephone, they've got a desk. There's so many factors to consider, but it also depends on the industry as well. Have you found, obviously within the accounting world, is there a particular industry where you're seeing more startups at the moment, or is it fairly kind of level, if you like, through?
Yeah, do you know what? Not really. But what we did actually notice through last year, so through 2020, obviously, through the pandemic, people were being put on furlough, or people were being laid off. So what we found is that actually there were these smaller businesses growing from people's homes, and people starting these new businesses, I'd say predominantly sole trades, as a stopgap to try and get some income in whilst they were in this predicament, and whilst they were stuck at home where they could. And something else we did notice is or businesses diversifying, because of course, for some businesses, say particularly for catering, and the hospitality industry, they weren't having those people coming through the doors anymore. So you found that they were doing deliveries and takeaways and things like that, and diversifying their business to enable some income to come in at a time when it was very limited. So it was really interesting seeing how businesses and people adapted to that.
Really interesting point, and the fact that you mentioned about people working from home. So one type of insurance that I didn't mention was products liability, and
Right.
people working from home. Some people managed to find like certain products that thrived during the pandemic, but working from home isn't covered under a standard household policy, and also it doesn't pick up the liability aspect of the business.
Yeah.
So therefore they would then need to consider like a working from home policy that would pick up those additional covers that aren't covered under a household policy. But again, unless the question was asked, people wouldn't actually think about it. They just think, oh,
no, absolutely not.
Business, generating some income, so I needed to, which is awesome, by the way, but it leaves gaps open to potential risk that it wouldn't be covered by an insurance. And so what we tended to do was to call clients, and we've continued this, but do like a 3-month update. So during the pandemic, we were in contact with most clients anyway, but during that conversation, it'd be like, what changes have been made? And the diversifying is a great example. So clients that diversified their business, I'm trying to think of an example, and there's loads out there, but there's none that's coming straight to my mind. But there'll be the manufacturers, I suppose, would be a great part, where they might be manufacturing one product. During the pandemic, there wasn't a requirement or a need for that product, so they stopped. But instead, they started manufacturing masks, or they started manufacturing hand sanitizer, which was completely different to their business description, and also had other risks involved. So by having that conversation, we were able to change and adapt the policy that they had to then cover the new products that they were providing, and also provide that product's liability. So that if a product were to cause harm or to injure someone accidentally, unintentionally, that they would be covered.
I mean, that's something I didn't know, Wes.
Every day's a school day.
It is.
So, yeah, we had a lot of those conversations, and policies were changed. So not only was the turnover, the wages, which on a commercial combined, so like a manufacturers, for example, they're key elements to the rating for the premium. So we were working with clients to reduce the turnover, to reduce the wages, but also to change the policy depending on what products they were starting to manufacture. And it made sure that there wasn't any gaps during that period, because there's nothing worse than having a phone call saying X, Y, and Z's happened. Oh, by the way, I didn't tell you, but I'm no longer doing that trade. I'm doing this trade, which would cause a world of pain for everyone.
Yeah.
Really.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So when you say about diversifying working from home, really two really good points.
Yeah. And the things and what they have to think about as well, you know, from an insurance perspective, not just from a, you know, an operational perspective, I suppose.
Yeah, and like I said, you don't tend to think about the insurance side of it, because
that's it, because you put your insurance in place at the beginning, don't you? Absolutely. And then you forget about it until it needs to be renewed.
You do, unless you get a phone call as a reminder. It's one of those bills that's paid. You think you're covered, job done for 12 months, but certainly over the last 18 months, it's certainly not the case. And by keeping that communication line open and speaking to clients without annoying them, but like speaking to them on a regular basis, we're keeping up to date. And then as the experts, you can change it as you see fit. Like I said, making sure there's no gaps. So that certainly worked well for us. So going back to starting up your own business, what have been like the ups and downs for you so far?
Yeah, okay. So I think one of the main sort of factors for us is, you know, we're in charge now. We're the top of the tree, so you know, we're responsible, aren't we, for everything. So that, you know, that's a big difference, I suppose, from being employed, where, you know, there's always someone above you, there's always someone to sort of, you know, who's holding the fort, if you like, and is responsible for everything. But that's us now. But you know, that's absolutely fine. I think one of the other things that we really love about you know, working for ourselves now is we love the flexibility. You know, it's lovely. I mean, I would say working for yourself, I think you work harder and you work longer. Yeah. But equally, you know, you can be flexible. So if you think, oh, actually, I need to take half a day this week or a day this week, or, you know, I've got an appointment somewhere, you can take it. You don't have to ask anyone else. You know, you're your own boss, aren't you? You answer to yourself. So that's obviously one of the considerations and one of the things that we like. So actually, for us, getting started took a lot longer than we thought it was going to. You know, different industries have different things that you have to, you know, you might have to be regulated. So as accountants, our regulator is the ICAW. So, you know, you have to register with them. And for us, we then had to register with the HMRC as agents. And all those things take time. And actually, having never done it before, you don't know how long these things take. So, you know, waiting for all that to be in place so that we can actually get going was a little bit nail-biting, if you like. But once we had that in place, you know, we were good to go. Obviously, you know, we're now responsible, we're the bosses, so all the responsibility lies with us and we're top of the tree. So that's, you know, quite something that's quite different. But for myself and Anna at Athena, we share that responsibility, which works perfectly for us. And one of the things that we both love, actually, as a small firm, we took the decision quite early on that we were going to work from home, you know, and that we weren't actually going to get premises at this stage. It was an overhead that we didn't need, and also working through the pandemic, obviously as an employees, but we were able to still deliver the service that we'd always delivered from home. So we decided that actually, you know, just to save on that overhead of an office, that was the thing to do for us. And actually, we both really enjoy working from home. And that's not to say that we won't have offices in the future, you know, as we grow, but certainly for now, that works really well. And we've both got lovely office buddies in the way of our furry friends. So I've got a little dog, and Anna's got 2 dogs.
Excellent.
And it's lovely being with them, and it's nice being able to I do the school pickups. It's nice to be there for your family as well, you know.
100%. We you talk about flexibility. When we set up the Glowshore, that was one of our priorities, was that flexibility. And it's awesome that we're able to drop the girls off every day to school. We're able to pick them up every day between Bex and I. And they don't really realize it because they're used to it. But as children, we never really, well, we didn't have that. So I'm hoping, probably too much, but I'm hoping as they get older, they'll realize that actually it was quite nice to be picked up every day either by mum or dad. And that's part of the flexibility of running your own business. Obviously, the work still needs to get done. So it will either get done earlier, or you get more done
later in the evening.
Later in the evening, or you end up delegating it. I don't know about you, but from about 8:30, I'm good to no one. I'm literally done for the day. So literally, it's like an hour and a half after they go to bed, where if there is something that's urgent, will get done. Otherwise, it waits till the next day.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's all is prioritizing, isn't it? So, you know, as you've just said, if something has to be done, and that means working late, we're going to do it. We're going to get it done, aren't we? Absolutely. But equally, you know, if that can wait until the morning, well, maybe we'll get up earlier and do it in the morning, or fit it into our day if you've obviously got space in the day. But at the end of the day, you know, I think for most businesses, why are you in business? You know, for me personally, you know, I'm in business because I want to support my family, you know, and so it needs to work with the family as well. Clients, of course, take priority as well, but it's lovely to be able to give some of your time back to your family as well, isn't it?
Oh, do you know, awesome. And similar to you, I mean, we're doing everything for our family. So to me, family does come first. Yeah. Absolutely. You said it's still important. And at the end of the day, they know they come first. But if there's something that's really urgent and needs to get sorted, then it will get sorted.
Yeah.
But they still know that they come first. And yeah, it's interesting on how different people perceive business to be, and it's what their priorities are as well. So I suppose it's being clear as to what the focus is and what the priority is when setting up the business, like you just said.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Look, I appreciate we've taken up quite a lot of your time, but there's just a couple more points or thoughts actually. So before this, when we were having a discussion, we touched on networking. And obviously we've met through networking as well.
All those years ago.
Yeah, it was quite a long time ago. But you touched on networking, which was really interesting. Can you share that as well again?
Yeah. I actually used to network when I was an employee of the company that I used to work for, and I probably stopped networking for them about 4 years ago. But that was to help me grow within my sort of position within that company, and I've always really enjoyed it, and I got new business for that particular firm that way. When we started up Athena, what was really interesting is that people I'd known from networking for a really long time, bearing in mind but haven't necessarily networked and seen them regularly over the last 4 years, were approaching me and saying, oh, can you do my tax return? Can you look after my company? Can you help me with this? But they hadn't approached me when I worked for a larger firm. And a lot of the feedback that I've been getting is, well, actually, we like you, and now you've started a business, and we want you to look after us. And also, we know that Athena Accounting is a small business like us, a small medium business like us. So it was really interesting to get that feedback.
Yeah. It is, and it's really good. And one thing that we found as well over the last 6 months, 9 months, is being local. So we're being approached by prospects, by leads, by businesses that are looking for insurance, but one of their main priorities is that they're dealing with a local broker so that they can go and see them if there's an issue there. They're not dealing with like a national or a call center. So we found that being local has been really important to quite a few clients, as in new clients as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I do think that, a lot of businesses and a lot of people, they want to know that you're available to them, be that on the phone, be that in person, and, being local, and particularly with you guys, you've got the office, they can come in and visit you and, get your expertise, have your expertise on hand, Wes.
Absolutely. On top.
My dog's barking.
Oh, that's okay.
Ollie, stop it. Stop it.
So it's getting hungry. We can edit that bit as well.
I think it's because there's some banging outside, so he's like,
oh, is it?
like
that. So I suppose last point from me really is about social media, how important it is, and how you found like setting up the social media, how you deliver content, how you think about content. For us, it's a complete minefield. And
I like your social media, Wes. Yeah, I do really like you. I've always liked your social media. I think you guys always come across as you are. I think your personalities really shine through your social media and your pictures and what you offer. So yeah, I like it.
Thank you. I'd like to take all the glory, but I don't really have much to do with social media. I don't really like social media from a personal point of view.
Yeah,
I find it quite evasive and sometimes quite fake. So that was one of the main things that we wanted to make sure that we didn't do on our social media. But yeah, Bex will take most of the credit, in all honesty, and then working with a company that do a lot of social media for us as well. They've been great. So do you do your own social media at the moment?
We do. So, initially we decided, that's the way to go. Let's do it ourselves. At the end of the day, we'd like our social media to be a reflection of us. Yeah. So when we were considering what sort of content to put on, and also how frequently to post, we don't want to be one of these firms that's bombarding people all the time, a post every day. So we've decided, for us, it works to do a couple of posts a week. And what we try and do is do, a technical post, something that's more interesting and relevant to our clients, updates on changes or, accounting things that they might need to be kept up to date with, but also have a little bit about us and a little bit about our personalities, what we like to do, and I really hope that that's is coming across on social media, and we have already had new client business from social media. For me, getting to grips with Instagram, because I'd never used it before, what is Instagram? Was quite interesting, but it's just getting used to everything, isn't it? And the hashtags and all that sort of, all those sorts of things, really. Whether we'll have the time in the future to continue doing our own social media is something that we'll have to wait and see, and something that we'll have to consider as we grow.
Yeah, absolutely. We got to that point where we kind of do some ourselves and then outsource some of it as well. Awesome. Okay. Do you know, I've really enjoyed this conversation.
So have I, Wes. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Is there any final words of wisdom or nuggets that you'd like to share?
Just, for those of you that are in business and that you work with your accountant, if a bit like what you said about changes in your business, if there's any changes to your business, tell your accountant, tell your insurance advisor, because you might not think it's a big thing. Actually, it might impact on your tax, it might impact on your accounts, it might impact on your insurance. So, if there's anything you're going to change or anything new that's going on in your business, share that with, the people that are helping you.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
Hey, honestly, thank you so much. It's been brilliant talking to you today, and thank you for sharing.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
You're welcome.
Thank you for listening to the Glowshaw Business Chat series. If you'd like to be a guest on our show, or if you'd like to discuss how we can help your business mitigate the risks you face, please email Wes on wesleyhaines@glowshaw.co.uk.